The nightmare jolted me awake, a silent scream trapped in my throat. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum in the oppressive silence of my room. Then, a touch, colder than the grave, traced the tear track on my cheek. I froze. He was sitting on the edge of my bed, a silhouette against the faint glow of the emergency light in the hallway. Dr. Evan Reed, or as I knew him, Entity A Black 001, Erebos. His voice was a low whisper, a sound that belonged to the crushing pressure of the deep ocean, not a sterile room in the Paragon Research Institute. You dream of them, but you belong to me. My name is Kaylin Hollis, and I am the keeper for the most dangerous creature humanity has ever contained. My parents are senior researchers at the Paragon Research Institute. They have been since before I was born. My nanny, Helen, was the one who raised me. My parents were only interested in their work, in the anomalous entities we studied, with a fervor that bordered on our religious obsession. They were never interested in me. My birth, I've always known, was just an accident. Then, my mother got sick, growing weaker with each passing day. My father began taking more frequent trips out to sea, disappearing for months at a time. Until today. Today, my father returned. And for the first time in my memory, my perpetually grim father looked at me with something resembling pleasure. He led my mother and me down to the deepest level of the facility, level B7, his face alight with a manic glee. Look, he breathed, his voice trembling with excitement. It's a miracle. He pulled back a heavy curtain. It revealed a creature suspended in a massive, reinforced containment tank. It was he was a merman. Tiny, glowing particles drifted in the synthetic seawater, the telltale sign of a powerful weakening agent. Mounted on the ceiling above the tank were twin sonic emitters and high-voltage tasers. All of it screamed one thing: this merman was incredibly dangerous. Perhaps because he had lived his entire life in the sunless abyss, his skin was as pale and smooth as marble. His lower body was a tail, easily 2 meters long, covered in scales the color of polished obsidian. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, they shimmered with a cold, menacing beauty. I'd seen many anomalous entities in my 20 years, but nothing had ever struck me with such force. I swear, he was the most beautiful, most perfect creature I had ever seen. Suddenly, a high-frequency sound, almost inaudible, emanated from the merman's throat. We didn't know it then, but every electronic device in the room flickered and died for a fraction of a second. My mother stumbled forward, pressing herself against the thick glass of the tank, her eyes fixated on the merman. Her face contorted as she mashed it against the glass, a grotesque smile splitting her features. A dry, rattling cackle escaped her lips. My father, meanwhile, raised a camera. He began snapping photos, the flash glinting off the glass, capturing the image of my mother and the merman. Click, click, click. Kaylin, look. This is the greatest discovery of the 21st century. It's an anomalous entity from the deep sea. Designation, A Black 001. My father pulled out a file. First detected in the Mariana Trench. We tracked it for over 2 years before we successfully acquired it. He turned, his hand clamping down on my shoulder, his nails digging into my flesh. I didn't dare resist. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead from the pain. My father has mania. If I fought back, I'd be met with the familiar sting of a belt, the jolt of a taser, or strapped to an examination table as a temporary test subject. None of those were pleasant experiences. He seemed oblivious to my pain, his eyes wild behind his glasses. A Black 001 slit pupils allow for perfect vision in the abyssal dark. Its upper limbs have developed webbing between the digits, and its fingers end in hook-like claws. It can achieve a swimming speed of over 100 kilometers per hour. He stared at me, his eyes gleaming with a fanatical madness, muttering to himself, "This is a breakthrough, a breakthrough, a breakthrough." I trembled, terrified by my father's manic state. My gaze drifted past him, back to the beautiful merman. His hair, like black seaweed, floated around his head in the water. His pitch-black, slit pupils were fixed on us, and his features were as sharp and perfect as a classical sculpture. If you looked closely, you could see gills on his neck, opening and closing in a steady, unnerving rhythm. He was a male, nothing like the mermaids from fairy tales. His cold, black eyes watched us without blinking, like a predator sizing up its prey. A chill ran down my spine, my breath hitched, and my heart began to pound. He was beautiful, but he terrified me. A deep, primal part of my brain screamed that with the arrival of A Black 001, everything was out to change. My parents were senior researchers in Area 3 of the Paragon Institute, responsible for the assessment, monitoring, and study of anomalous entities. Since A Black 001 arrived, my perpetually melancholic mother had even started to smile. She said the merman could cure her illness. How, she never explained. She would just look at me and smile, a chilling, empty expression. On the 4th day, after receiving experimental approval, my parents began their research on the merman. They performed vivisections without anesthesia to study his pain tolerance. They cut open his abdomen and chest cavity to observe his cellular regeneration capabilities. I knew that any anomalous entity brought to the institute was destined for a grim fate. How pitiful. That night, after the staff had gone to sleep, I disabled the surveillance cameras and slipped into the lab. To test the merman's limits, my parents hadn't fed him for half a month. A Black 001, hi, my name is Kaylin. I poured a bucket of small fish and shrimp into the tank. I forced a stiff smile, trying my best to appear friendly. Here, you must be hungry. Go on, eat. The merman didn't seem hostile towards me. His black pupils were locked on me, watching. Was he studying me? The thought sent a jolt of fear through me. No, impossible. I stumbled, nearly falling off the ladder. The plastic bucket slipped from my grasp and clattered to the floor with a loud thud. I froze, my mind blank, my eyes wide with panic. Then, a wave of relief washed over me as I remembered how well soundproofed the labs were. And thankfully, in recent years, the institute staff had dwindled, leaving no one to patrol the labs at night. I stared at the sealed door for a moment, then let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. When I turned back, I saw the merman using his sharp claws to tear open a fish's belly. Red entrails spilled into the water. The wet, tearing sounds of him chewing echoed through the silent lab. I was terrified. I swallowed the scream that rose in my throat and forced myself to sound calm. Take your time. No rush. But my hands and feet were ice cold. My heart hammered against my ribs, as if it would be consumed by fear at any moment. HHH. I suddenly realized my mental state was deteriorating. Of course. A black class high-threat entity, the psychic contamination level was extreme. Even with the reinforced containment, a moment of carelessness was all it took to be affected. I was drenched in sweat, shaking like a leaf, and then, the merman smiled. As I collapsed to the floor, hugging my knees, his smile widened. A flicker of cruel amusement danced in his pitch-black, slit pupils. My recent strange behavior quickly alerted my parents. My father dragged me to the lab and forced me to watch a live vivisection. The merman's pale abdomen was sliced open, a bloody wound gaping in his flesh. Nausea churned in my stomach. I scrambled to the corner of the lab, trembling. My father hummed a cheerful tune as he held the scalpel, dissecting the merman, who was strapped to the operating table. Looking at my father in his hazmat suit and splash-proof goggles, I felt nothing but terror. He put down the scalpel and slowly began to suture the wound, his eyes, with a hint of a smile, landing on me. I knew my fear was feeding his mania, satisfying him immensely. The black, reinforced boots of his suit squeaked on the epoxy floor. The squeak sound was amplified in the silent lab. Then, his fist landed on my head. He kicked me hard in the stomach, again and again. I knew this was a warning. He was displeased with my transgression. I curled into a ball in the corner, my hands clasped tightly over my head. I prayed the hazmat suit wouldn't tear, exposing my body to the contaminated environment. I kept begging for mercy. Dad, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. Just then, the lab door opened. My sickly mother get in. She yawned, then froze when she saw the scene. I immediately cried out, Mom, my hopeful gaze fixed on her. Mom, save me. But my mother simply looked away, her expression cold and indifferent. She, too, was wearing a hazmat suit. She walked over to the operating table and coughed a few times. Darling, what's the progress on the circulatory and nervous systems? And the organ self-regeneration rate? Mom, it hurts. Are the blood analysis results back yet? What about cell division and DNA replication? Mom, save me. My father finally stopped, breathing heavily. He crouched down gracefully and patted my cheek. Shut up. One more word and I'll sew your mouth shut. Be a good boy. Don't make me angry, or else. He didn't finish, but I understood. Or else. The merman lying on the operating table would be my fate. Then, my mother walked over. She looked down at me, her face devoid of any emotion. I clutched my aching stomach and forced a placating SM. Meeting my hopeful gaze, my mother's lips curled slightly. Don't smile, she said. It's ugly. My face froze. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Although my mother was gaunt and frail from her illness, she was still breathtakingly beautiful. I tried to lift my head, but she took a step forward, planting her boot on my face and grinding it in. You gave your mother stretch marks. You're a bad boy. If it weren't for... She stopped abruptly, running a hand through her hair. It's because I had you that I got sick. It's all your fault. All your fault. All your fault. I curled up, sobbing, tears and snot streaming down my face. It hurt so much. But my parents, in perfect unison, grinned, revealing identical, chilling smiles. My head buzzed. Fear, like a creeping moss, spread over my body, chilling my blood. In stark contrast to their cruelty towards me, my father gently lifted my mother into his arms. Through the thick material of their suits, he pressed a devout key. SS on her helmet. My love, why aren't you resting? His murmuring admonitions faded as they disappeared down the empty corridor. I hunched over, gasping for breath, and my eyes instinctively shot to the operating table. And I saw the merman, who should have been unconscious, staring at me with a blank expression. How was that possible? He'd been injected with a massive dose of sedatives and weakening agents. The fluorescent lights flickered. A black 001 skin was deathly pale, his nose high and straight, his handsome face perfect, like a sculpture, but his slit pupils held a cold, inorganic indifference. Suddenly, the walls of the lab began to twist and distort. HHH. I gasped, screamed, and fell into an endless abyss. No, psychic contamination.